Well, welcome to another edition of This Week in Botanical Medicine with me, your host and instructor, Stephanie Georgieff. This is part of the Deeply Rooted Botanical Medicine with Stephanie Georgieff productions. And I do want to remind everyone to please check the links in the program notes if you would like to learn more about all of my courses, which are available covering botanical medicine. As the time of the posting of this podcast, there are a few days left in the wonderful month of June to enjoy and learn all about skin health. I have a mini course, which is part of the larger botanical course that I offer. And until the end of June, which is about a week away, you can still take advantage of this greatly reduced and time and money course for your summer skin health. So get your biggest external organ in shape for summer. There is so much happening in the world of botanical medicine. I'm starting to consider to make this more of a daily podcast, but the weekly format will have to maintain for the time being. And there's much happening, as I said, in the world of botanical medicine, which in our age of bottleneck petroleum products shortages and delays is actually a major key to both national and natural security. The international herbal community, or botanical medicine community, is seeing a strong push towards bilateral infrastructure, a focus on standardization in emerging research, and critical discussions surrounding upcoming regulatory overhauls. There are amazing, and I'm telling you, amazing bilateral talks concerning botanical medicine, and some interesting bilateral talks concluded on June 18th. Indonesia's Ministry of Culture announced an expanded partnership with Chinese state infrastructure developers. And the goal is to build a major traditional medicine center in Indonesia designed to elevate regional wellness heritage, specifically focusing on a medical paradigm, which I personally am unfamiliar with, but after reading these headlines, I want to know more. And it's called Jamu. And Jamu has recently been recognized as a UNESCO intangible cultural heritage. And the goal of these bilateral meetings, binational meetings, was to integrate Jamu with clinical infrastructure. Now, Jamu is a traditional Indonesian system of herbal medicine and wellness that has been practiced for over 1,300 years, with its roots traced back to the ancient maritime kingdom in Java, recognized by UNESCO as part of the world's intangible cultural heritage. It's a holistic practice that emphasizes the prevention of illness and the maintenance of balance within the body. Fadli Zon, the Indonesian Minister of Culture, and Gao Bo, the chairman of China State Construction International Holdings Limited, had quite the discussions. Minister Zon explicitly noted that Indonesia doesn't want this to be a sterile, purely clinical medical facility. The mandate given to the China State Construction International, the CSCI, is to blend advanced sterile laboratory and clinical infrastructure with spaces that act as a living platform for cultural expression, education, and regional heritage preservation. Galbo noted that CSCI's involvement will extend past the physical brick and mortar development. The project includes integrated pipelines to improve regional human resources, effectively creating educational exchanges to train practitioners, pharmacologists, and cultural curators in state-of-the-art facility management and standardization practices. I just think this is awesome. And all of this comes out of these World Health Organization regional meetings that create topics and concepts for focus for the regions, which inspire member states to start developing these topics. And not only does this develop scientific validation of various medicinal practices that are based on traditional healing practices, which are essentially mostly botanical medicines. This also helps create local economies that benefit indigenous populations. And after Jamu's inscription into the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity list, this is where Indonesia is going to use the center to pivot from a domestic herbal tradition into a highly regulated, and what that means is basically a scientifically validated and also sanitary global wellness leader. And there's an Old Town revitalization intersection. The Ministry of Culture is weaving this center into a broader urban heritage initiative. The Indonesian Minister Zan expressed that a key focus of this partnership will involve the revitalization of historical buildings and old towns across various Indonesian regions. This is really wonderful. And not only is it wonderful, it is very smart. By pairing with China, a country that has successfully integrated traditional Chinese medicine into its state hospital systems and standardized phytochemistry on a massive corporate level, Indonesia aims to create a validated clinical framework for Jamu. And this is a blueprint for national identity preservation scaled by international capital. Instead of allowing Jamu to remain a loose collection of folk remedies, Indonesia is building a specialized high-tech fortress to scientifically validate and produce and celebrate its native materia medica on a world stage. We need some little trumpets here. Now, in other news, the 9th edition of the International Conference on Traditional Medicine and Integrative Health, which is called Traditional Med 2026, is convening at the Hotel Alimara in Barcelona. And this brings together a really unique, diverse global cohort of ethnobotanists, phytochemists, clinical researchers, and regulatory experts. The divining theme of the scientific tracks this year is, quote, health for all, utilizing traditional methods in today's healthcare. The core objective is moving past a purely defensive validation text, and I totally relate to this. When I was in naturopathic school, it seemed like all we did was try to validate everything, even though it had been in practice for thousands of years, and humanity seemed to continue to thrive if they ate garlic for a cold, a chest cold. But anyways, there's this kind of this inferiority complex when it comes to botanical medicine or any type of natural therapeutics, that you're always trying to prove that they actually work. And it isn't essentially what we lay people would call woo-woo. So we're wanting to go beyond that. And what I always like to say to people who ask me if botanical medicine works, the two most populated countries on the earth are China and India, and the bulk of their health practices are based on botanical medicines. So somehow these people are living through these supposedly quack medicines. But it's really, really interesting that botanical medicine is coming out of this validation and defensiveness, and basically building an aggressive cross-disciplinary bridge where indigenous empirical observation directly informs modern biomedical protocols. And there will be thematic focus areas of scientific sessions and forums, all looking at ethnopharmacology, practices, et cetera, et cetera. And the ones that I personally find very interesting, you can look up the schedule of speakers if you wish. But there are presentations that will be utilizing advanced network pharmacology as to how to understand these multi-herb formulations. And this is very key when it comes to Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine, as well as other Asian medicinal practices, because we don't use just single herbs, okay? We use them in complex formulas that have been modified through thousands of years of practice. And what modern pharmaceutical researchers are used to doing is looking at individual isolated chemicals compounds. And they'll say, well, this isolated chemical compound, after we fed 10,000 kilos into a rat, it died, and therefore it's dangerous. What we're needing to update our scientific research is to understand how these substances act in symphony, in collaboration. So this is very interesting. And the other presentations, which I personally find very interesting, are looking at how mind-body disciplines, which are Qigong, yoga, meditation protocols, acupuncture, etc., how these alter inflammatory biomarkers. And they're going to map direct neuroendocrine pathways that are influenced by classical somatic practices. And the reason I personally find this so interesting is both in Ayurveda as well as traditional Chinese medicine, the practice of these medicines is not just one methodology. So if you go to a practitioner either in India or in China, you're not going to be prescribed just, a formula of an herb. You're going to be prescribed a full approach to the health, which in China will include acupuncture, it will include qigong, it might include tuina, which is a type of massage. There will be a botanical formulation in all of this, as well as a nutritional prescription. And this will also be true in Ayurvedic practitioners in India. They won't be using acupuncture, obviously, but they will be using other types of body therapies. And I always used to tell my patients, you know, the herbs are kind of tedious to use, I must admit, especially if you cook your herbs, as they say. But, because you have to boil them and all this other stuff, and the house smells like an apothecary. But the herbs combined with the acupuncture actually potentiate both of those therapies. And I always said that the acupuncture makes the herbs go to their target organs, and the herbs basically deepen the acupuncture. And I have no scientific validation of that, but apparently in Barcelona this week, they're going to talk about the scientific validation that I and my fellow practitioners know to be true. Now, a major point of emphasis at this Barcelona forum is ensuring that the global race for new plant-derived drugs doesn't lead to systemic erasure of cultures that preserve that knowledge. And they've got tracts addressing the legal, ethical, and anthropological methodologies required to protect indigenous intellectual property. That means if you go into the rainforest and you get a plant that's been used forever, you're not going to get a patent on that and then, move the people off of the plan so that you can have raw materials for your drugs. They want to make sure to emphasize that the spiritual or holistic content of the medicine as well as the people are not being violated. There are, because the botanical products industry is going to reach $700 billion per year by 2032. The scientific tracks on phytotherapy and medicinal plants are signaling an ecological emergency. We don't want to harvest everything to death. And researchers are addressing the reality that wild harvesting pipelines for high demand botanicals are actually collapsing under climate pressure and over extraction. And this is where creating farms that are dedicated to certain plants that can be replicated all over the planet will help preserve all sorts of things. And the focus is on implementing bioregional sourcing laws that mandate fair share economic returns to the local and indigenous communities, holding agricultural stewardships of these vulnerable medicinal ecosystems. It's also of note that the United States has bombed at least 31 universities and major research centers for botanical medicine across Iran. And this is all done via Grok, apparently, that's choosing the targets to bomb. And this has caused sustained direct hits or severe collateral damage from these airstrikes. Now, Iran has historically been an elite powerhouse for research into plant medicines, ethnopharmacology, pharmacochemistry, all sorts of things. And because botanical and pharmacognosy labs are embedded within these major medical sciences and agricultural universities and hubs like Tehran, etc., the physical laboratories and equipment have been thrown into complete chaos. Now, numerous of these researchers were scheduled to present at this meeting in Barcelona in this week. It's a big issue. Hopefully, these researchers will be able to either attend the meetings in Barcelona virtually and also present virtually. But one of the greatest fears within the global community is the permanent loss of decades of localized regional ethnobotanical field data regarding Iran's unique arid climate medicinal flora. And this is really a big deal. The international ethnobotanical societies are working alongside the remaining regional staff to rapidly digitize field notes, seed bank logs, and genetic sequencing data into cloud-based open access repositories before further infrastructure or power grid failures occur. They're also creating remote collaborative fellowships for researchers who cannot or choose to not leave Iran during whatever type of thing you want to call it's happening that changes hourly. Apparently, we're supposed to have a 60-day ceasefire. We'll see. Organizations are prioritizing remote research fellowships, and these provide stipends to scholars to write up systemic reviews, historical ethnobotanical analyses, and meta-analyses of clinical trials from home. And this will ensure their academic publishing lifelines remain intact, even if their physical labs are in ruins. So, we shall see if these institutions in Iran and their knowledge databases and researchers will be able to weather the whims of certain world leaders, and how much of the so-called agreement that is anyone's guess will actually create a rebuilding fund for Iran that can address this collateral damage, because this collateral damage affects the entire globe. It is not a regional issue. This is a global issue, because as our diseases evolve and climate change changes patterns of disease, and it's my opinion, I do have a little bit of validating data, but I have always maintained that COVID-19 pandemic had a lot to do with climate change. And I feel the same way about the current Ebola crisis and all sorts of stuff that's going on right now. So the keys to actually dealing with pandemics and disease, epidemics, etc., due to climate change affects everybody. And the key to that is actually in botanical medicines, how to heal that and deal with that. Because as plants start adapting, we can learn from them and apply that in the adapting nature of bacteria and viruses, etc., etc. So rebuilding Iran's research facilities when it comes to phytopharmacology will benefit us all. And I hope, in the meantime, any professors or researchers from Iran who were scheduled to attend or present at the meeting in Barcelona are able to participate through virtual sources, such as our beloved Zoom. So this is Stephanie Georgieff saying, what a week in botanical medicine. And thanks for spending your valuable time with me. Until our next session, make sure to check out the links in the program notes. And until then, be well.